on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and today my guest is writer-director Kent Jones, and we're talking about his brand new film, Diane, which stars Mary Kay Place and Jake Lacy and Andrea Martin and Estelle Parsons and many others. Welcome to the show, Kent.
Good to be here. Thanks for welcoming me.
You're welcome. This film was very personal for you, wasn't it? First, before we really get started, why don't you tell the audience what this story is about, what Diane is about?
The synopsis version would be that it's a movie about a woman played by Mary Kay, the titular character Diane, who's in her 60s, and she's someone who lives on a fixed income, and she really defines herself according to the way that she helps care for others, according to the people that she cares for. She's one of those people who brings food to people when there's been an illness or an operation or something like that, who's driving from one place to another. This is a very New England story, by the way, to visit her cousin in the hospital who's sick with cancer, to visit her aunts and take them places, and who are beloved to her and who are the whole world to her. And then to go and constantly check in on her son, who she knows has a drug problem. The son is played by Jake Lacy, and who she goes through the motions of, pretending with when he says, "Oh, no, there's nothing going on. I'm just sick. Don't worry about me. I kicked that," and she just goes along with it, but is always there to make sure that he's still alive and okay. And at a certain point in the film, everything shifts, and she has to learn to start being with herself more.
That's a very good synopsis, and then it goes from there.
Yeah.
So, obviously, this film was very personal for you. Talk a little bit about why it was personal for you and how the character of Diane, how you developed her.
Well, it's something that percolated in my mind for many, many years. More than my mind, it just percolated within me. And it really started when all of my own great aunts and uncles were still around, very much alive and well when I was young. And I just had a desire to make a film that gave an idea of who they were and what the world was that I lived in. That was really the constellation of them. I just wanted to be around them. They were all New Englanders. They were born on the border of Canada and right in New York State, but they all settled in New England, really. And they went through very tough times, and some of them went through real tragedies, but they all had this beautiful stoicism, sense of humor, a real tenderness, a real vulnerability. They all meant the world to me. And so that was where it started, and it kind of developed over the years as I thought about it. It turned into a story of a mother and son. The son, at a certain point, it was a son that she had to care for because of a drug addiction. I had gone through that experience with a friend of mine. He had gone down that road. And, as is the case in the film, often sometimes when the drugs go away, the addiction continues and takes on another form. That was something that I knew about. And that layer added. And then when I saw The Rainmaker, based on the John Grisham novel in 1997 with Mary Kay as the mother of a boy who's dying of cancer, I thought, I'm going to write it for her. I already loved Mary Kay very much, but when I saw her in that movie, I thought, this is for her. And so when we met, I told her what I had in mind, and we met many years later, and she said, "Gee, I look forward to reading it. You'll be able to raise a dime, with my name. I'll worry about that." And, I wrote it after my own mother had passed away. And we were able to make it thanks to producers, Carolyn Kaplan and Oren Moverman, Eddie Weissman, Julia Lebedev, Luca Borghese, and Ben Howe. So it was a long road, and here we are.
Yes, here you are. Now, you debuted this film. Did you debut it at Tribeca last year, the Tribeca Film Festival?
Yeah. Yeah, we did actually. Yeah.
And you won all kinds of awards.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
It was just. My wife and I were there. My wife is the costume designer of the film. The film is actually dedicated to her. And we met when we were making the movie. And we were sitting there, and we were told that the film was going to win something. And first it was cinematography, and we thought, well, that's lovely. And then they called me up for screenplay, and I went backstage, and they said, no, you have to stay. And I'm like, gee, there's nothing else left. So we won Best Film as well. So that was obviously a very nice moment.
Very nice moment. That's huge. That's huge. It really is. So, what was that moment like for you? This is you had another film, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. But what was that moment like?
I mean, I have made other films. I've made documentaries. This was my first narrative film. I was back there. I knew Jane Rosenthal, the director of the festival, and I crossed paths with Bob De Niro. I worked on for many years on many things with Marty Scorsese. But Bob's acting had permanently marked me when I was young. It was, just a great, and I mean, suddenly there he was giving me a hug and giving me an award. It was overwhelming.
I can imagine it really was a wonderful moment. So talk a little bit more about, there's the movie evolves into, I mean, there's a lot of death in this movie, it seems like.
It's true.
Yeah. So why that? Why was that so important?
It's not so much that it was important to have a lot of death. That's not it, really. What it is that loss is part of life.
Right.
There's a moment when Diane is she's getting her nails done and get her hair cut, and she's an amazing actress named LaChance who is doing her nails. And Diane is talking about the fact that, she lost so many of her family members so quickly. And she said, I thought that they would be around forever. And LaChance's character says, well, we all think that everybody's going to live forever than the kids. And we do. All of the people that we love, of course we think that. How can we not? You can't suddenly think to yourself, gee, one day I'm going to lose you. That's not part of the idea. Then, when it happens, it's a shock. But then, you come to understand, well, that is life, and there's a way of coming to terms with it. I don't, I was present when my mother died. To me, it was a real privilege to have been there with her, because it's a passage that's, miraculous in its own way, and just as miraculous as the birth of my children. And it's just sort of like, but it's life. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a film in which that shock is absorbed, and then you develop a different relationship with yourself, really.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, definitely. It does that. When putting this together, it's interesting because the mother-son relationship is just very raw all the way through. I mean, it just doesn't seem even, she's concerned about her son being a drug addict and worried. And then when he becomes I hope I'm not giving anything away, but a religious fanatic, he goes from one addiction to another addiction. She doesn't seem to be that much happier about that situation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's raw because relationships that run deep are raw between parents and children, I think, in this, or no, they're not inherently raw, but they run deep. Mm-hmm. And so if everything isn't discussed and out on the table, then they're going to be raw. And so in the case of this mother and son relationship, there's things that have not been discussed because, we all have things in our life at one point that feel too scary to discuss. So they always come back in other forms, to us, and until we come to terms with them. I think that in the case of this relationship, on the one hand, she's just so prepared for him to just disappear. You know, she's just gone through the mill with him, that when he doesn't, it's kind of a shock to the system, and it happens at the same time as another very dramatic event in her life. And then she has to, and then she understands, well, you know, as I was saying before, you know, drugs go away, but the addiction doesn't. And I saw that happen, you know, with my friends. And, you know, sometimes that's a good thing in the sense that people who go through a 12-step program, that becomes the addiction for a while, but that's good. That brings them, that keeps them alive, you know,
right,
kept my friend alive. You know, whenever I hear anybody knocking AA, I just want to scream, because he wouldn't be alive if it weren't for AA.
Right.
But I also feel like it doesn't mean that, you know, oh, he saved himself, wow, isn't that great, then other things happen, you know? So one solution to one problem creates another kind of problem. I don't want to go into too much detail about it. I don't want people to see the movie, but, you know, I mean, that is, you know, that's life.
It is life. This is a slice of life. So you said you wrote this movie for Mary Kay Place when you saw her in The Rainmaker in 1997, and yet you carried this with you, obviously, for all those many years. What was it about Mary Kay Place that just struck you, and you knew that this was the movie for her, that you were going to create this for her?
Well, first of all, it's an inner energy. Mary Kay's born in Texas, grew up in Oklahoma, so she's from another part of the world. The Rainmaker took place around New Orleans, you know, in Louisiana. And so it's a different part of the country. Nonetheless, what I saw was something that I recognized as an inner quality, and by that, part of it has to do with the fact that she's trained in comedy, which means that there's a kind of a toughness in her. Same thing with Andrea Martin, who plays her friend Bobby. You know, it gives an extra edge to the sensibility of the artist, I think. It's one of the reasons, you know, sometimes my father used to say that he thought that singers made good actors. I think he was right about that. You know, Dean Martin and Sinatra were very good in some of their roles. Elvis Presley maybe less so, but whatever, you know. Anyway, and then with comics, it's interesting to watch, for instance, Don Rickles in Casino. You know, he gives it something that no one else could bring, or Alan King is in Casino as well. And I think that in the case of Mary Kay, it's a tension that to me felt completely in harmony with the kind of really rough sense of humor that my aunts had, the resilience that they had, the stoicism that they had, and also the deep emotionalism. And that's another thing that, you know, when you look at a great comic actor, that you see the way that the emotion works in relation to the outward instrument. And so, you know, I was deeply impressed by that in that movie. And it was interesting because when we talked about it, she really was that particular film, even though her part is small, was a very special experience for her.
Interesting, and it's obviously stuck with you all these years. So you could write a beautiful film for her to be in many years later. So, if you're just tuning in to the Jan Price Show, my guest today is Kent Jones, and we're talking about his brand new film called Diane. So, what was the most difficult part of filming this movie for you, Kent?
Oh, well, the most difficult part of filming I'm not sure. I think filming is kind of all of a piece when you're really doing it. In other words, there's a quote that I came across from Truffaut, a recording of Francois Truffaut near the end of his life. When I was making Hitchcock Truffaut, I found that he died very young. He had brain cancer, and he was pretty with it right up to the very end. But this recording was made really in the last weeks of his life. But he's reflecting on filmmaking, and he says, filmmaking is like, when you're making a movie, it's like you go into a fugue state. And he actually made a film about that, Day for Night, in which he himself plays the director, actually, of the movie within the movie. And it's true. You're just in it. And if you're not in it, if you find ways to remove yourself, that's not a good thing. So I couldn't tell you what was more difficult than anything else during the actual shooting, or how much sleep I got or didn't get. I can just tell you that it was all, in my mind, it was all one thing. There were logistical difficulties here and there. It was very tough, strangely enough, to find a forest with pine trees in it. The film takes place in, it was crazy. The film takes place in Massachusetts, but we shot right across the border in New York State, same part of the world, better tax breaks at the time. And I was like, okay, so we're here and we're in the Catskills, and so I'll just go find a forest with pine trees. It was insane. And then finally I found one, but I was just like, wow, I wonder what that's interesting,
That is interesting.
So, that was kind of difficult.
Finding pine trees. Who knew? Who knew that would be the most difficult thing?
Just crazy. Yeah, I know.
Well, you have pulled together an extraordinary cast. Talk a little bit about working with some of these amazing actresses. You have Estelle Parsons, who we absolutely adore, Joyce Van Patten, Andrea Martin. Just a great cast. Glennis O'Connor, Phyllis Somerville. How did you, and Deidre O'Connell, how did you put all of these wonderful people, and of course Jake Lacy, and we do want to talk a little bit about his performance in this film, but how did you put this cast together? Because it's a great ensemble.
It's amazing how many great artists there are over a certain age who want to do something that they can really dig into. Andrea and Mary Kay, for instance, work a lot, and but it's like, I think that this particular movie meant something different to them. Mary Kay, obviously, since it was written for her, but it's there's a lot of stuff that's being made, and a lot of it is really good. But I think that this was layered in a way, that maybe a lot of the people in the film were used to getting parts that were layered. And I think that at their age, and I think that, when the casting director, Jodie Angstritch, and I started talking about names, and she started naming people, I was just like, if Estelle Parsons can read it and, wants to read it, and, that would be great. Gee, I hope she likes it. And she just, immediately said yes. And she was 89, by the way, when we shot. Now she's 91.
Wow,
and,
really?
She's absolutely incredible. The concentration, her, that moment where she just gets up from her daughter's hospital bed and hugs Mary Kay is just always surprises me. It's just so spontaneous and beautiful. She also directed a production of Last Days of Judas Iscariot about a year and a half ago that my wife and I went to see. We were just blown away. Incredible. Deidre O'Connell, it turns out, apart from being a great, great actress, also grew up in the same town that I did. She read the script and she said, "Where are you from?" And she recognized names. It turned out I went to nursery school with her brother.
Oh my goodness.
That was crazy. Joyce Van Patten, someone I always loved. I had just watched Mikey and Nikki again, I think not too long before we started shooting. I mean, Andrea Martin, I just worshipped,
Right.
and I could do every single FCTV routine, that she did. When she and I met up, I sang that song to her that she did as Connie Franklin sings the most depressing songs ever written, one of the skits on FCTV.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, she was just incredible. And Phyllis Somerville, who's now on Broadway in To Kill a Mockingbird, these are amazing people.
Yeah.
And I also, Charles Weldon, who plays Tom, is an actor who I'd seen in movies. He was a beautiful, soulful man. He actually passed away in December from lung cancer. And I just consider myself so fortunate to have been able to work with him.
But
He brought something so beautiful to the film,
Yeah, it is a beautiful film. There's no question about that. Talk about a little about Jake Lacy and where we've seen him before and his performance in this film, and he is one of the most pivotal characters in the film.
Well, I mean, I needed to find someone who understood what the particularly imposing quality of being a junkie is all about. Mm-hmm. The imposing kind of like overbearing, swallowing up all the energy in the room quality. During and then after as well for a while, during the recovery phase, maybe early on. And I talked to a few actors and, I wasn't quite feeling right. And then Oren Moberman, producer, suggested Jake. And I really, really admired Jake's acting in Obvious Child, which is a very different kind of movie, a comedy with Jenny Slate. But I really loved his performance in that. And I loved his look. It seemed to me to live within the world of the story. And I also loved his performance in Carol, Todd Haynes' film, and which is a different kind of enterprise altogether, where we play someone who's very kind of sunny and cheerful at first and outgoing, and then is actually quite malevolent and doing something malevolent. So when he and I met, we just hit it off immediately. And we're from the same part of the world. He had a real understanding of the character, and I could not be happier than I was with Jake.
Yeah.
Really.
He does a wonderful performance. He gives a wonderful performance. Where can people see Diane, Kent?
It's opening. It's been opening in different places around the country. It opened in New York and LA on March 28th, and then it's expanding. And so, and it's also available for streaming. But I want as many people as possible to see it on the big screen.
I agree. Movies should be seen on the big screen. I totally agree.
100%.
Yes, 100%. I talk about that all the time on the show. Well, Kent, thank you so much for being on the show. It's wonderful talking with you, and I wish you much success with Diane.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Go to the Jan Price Show on Facebook and learn more about upcoming shows. And while you're there, like my page, but also write some comments, whether you like the show or things you'd like to hear upcoming, and find out more about upcoming shows there. And to listen to the Price Movie Minute movie reviews and to listen to archive shows that you may have missed, go to thejanpriceshow.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.